is a young mother and her children were dropped off on an Uber, seeking to buy a car. She just needed a car. Her spouse is in the military, going through a divorce. Her car had broken down, so she had no support. And I told her towards the tail end of that call, I said, hey, I have one idea. Well, over the span of the next month, I had almost 10 people come into that dealership specifically wanting to work with me.
Do you believe AI will replace sales people, and when? All right, so awesome, man. So Colin, I don't know if I've ever pronounced your last name correctly, so I'm gonna have you go for it.
That's a long list of people who haven't.
I'll say Colin P, but I'll leave it up to you right now to properly pronounce it so the world knows who you are.
So last name is Papineau. It's French. Easiest way to ever try to remember it, Papineau. Simple.
Papineau. Well, let me jump in, Colin Papineau. Let me just give you a couple of quick props here. This is just some of the stuff that I know, but I'm gonna read off because it's just right there in front of me. You have built 4 businesses in 15 plus months. Super awesome. In 23 plus months, you went from 0 to 635K of available funding in a very specific business that you and I met. I worked for you, gosh, many years ago. And that is a quick plug. That's Business Credit Academy. And that's a place where people can get anywhere from 50K to 350K and 0%. I mean, they can get a little less, but those are the big numbers. And that's at 0% interest. So this is a funding offer program that you've been doing for quite a while. And so let me introduce how you and I met. Traditional path. I was the closer. I am a closer. But at that time, you and I hopped on a call and we had a quick little interview. I think that next day, I hopped on, started closing with you, crushing with you, started a relationship with you. I was introduced for the first time to this type of service, this type of product out in the world. I gravitated pretty quickly with it because I was able to close it quickly and really kind of help people out. Um, that was many years ago, and I since stepped off and did and journeyed elsewhere on other offers as well as building out my own company. And man, I looked back again. I follow you, you follow me, and I've just been seeing a lot of growth in you and in your business. And I was like, I got to get a hold of Colin again, man. So I think I hit you up like a couple of weeks ago, and I think when I first met you, I think you were one child less. Now you have another
That
child.
is correct. Yeah.
So
Yeah. A whole human later.
yeah, so you've been building the tribe since last you and I worked together. But yeah, man, I just had to get a hold of you, man. I had to get you back on. And the reason for A Game and what really inspired me is the mindset behind A Game people, A Game humans, A Game players, A Game businesses. Because to get to an A Game level, you've had to work your way up. There's trials and tribulations,
Oh yeah.
successes and failures, and all of that to really earn and to be at an A Game level. And so I want to open up, with first of all, thanking you again for being on my show, my good friend, and for all of your success. And I want to hand it over to you really quickly. I'd love to hear your version of how you and I met and became friends and also worked together in the past.
To start off from long story short, you mentioned the 4 businesses in a relatively short period of time. That's my fault. I have not updated that Instagram bio in quite a while. A lot has changed. I've gotten more involved in a variety of other businesses, ranging from another funding company, partnered with one based out of Florida. We primarily work with clientele that are not US citizens, so we predominantly will fund ITIN numbers. No, a lot has changed over the years. A lot of good, a ton of good, bad, but then again, life as a business is nothing but peaks and valleys, right? And it's in those valleys, it really is the determining factor of what we do with that and how we come out on the other side. And if we come out on the other side, do we come out worse or do we come out for the better? Um, to go back to kind of where me and Alex got summed up is I'd been in the funding space for a while, not too long at that time, but we were having some successes and we were doing okay, but I was really trying to go into a ramp mode, if you will. If you remember. We I'd signed up for some programs that because my background is sales, but then again at that time and space, um the online community of getting connected with the right people, I was an infant in that regard. So I reached out to some good people asking for help, and lo and behold, that's where me and Alex got hooked up together. And to your point, I think we only had one conversation because when we had that initial call, something that stuck out to you, um, if I remember correctly, is I said, "Hey, you're selling me as much as I'm trying to sell you." Right? Both of us have a need and both of us have a problem that we're both trying to solve. Um, and that's what flourished into us accomplishing some really fantastic things in a relative short period of time. Um, towards the tail end of us working together, I remember very distinctly we had grown the business to a pretty substantial component that it unfortunately outgrew us,
Mhm.
and we had to make some very difficult decisions to scale things down as far as the front end on the front end sales side so we could rebuild the delivery side. Um, and to today, even though in that time and moment that was a really tough call, a lot of money had to move around, a lot of money had to be placed in appropriate things and this and that and the next, but I directly accommodate that decision of rather trying to band-aid a business, which is a very important aspect in my opinion. For a lot of people, when they come up to a problem, when they're butting heads with a problem in their business particularly, I don't think enough people go into it head first. They try to find a band-aid, they try to find a workaround. Um, but when you have a real problem like we did in the sake of fulfillment, you know, because at the end of the day, if your clients aren't getting the services that they pay for, you don't have a business, right? You just have a weird hobby that um, is really expensive. So we made that executive decision. It's led up to this time now. That decision then, over the last 6 months alone, Alex, we've raised over $67 million in funding for our
Wow.
clients.
Wow.
And I still attribute that decision then and that huge mindset shift of get your deliverables down solid and down pat, and that will lead to the next phase in business.
Yeah. That's interesting that you bring that up. And I don't know if I ever shared with you, but, I grew up in a small business. My mom and dad owned and operated a jewelry store. My father was a fifth generation watchmaker jeweler. I, at age 10, started the journey of being the sixth generation watchmaker jeweler. And one of the things that I learned growing up in the back of the jewelry store and then eventually coming up to the front was I always saw my parents do service first and sales because it was my dad actually like making your wedding rings or repairing your jewelry or whatever. My mom making pearls. And so I always grew up seeing these two people do service and then people paid them, right? And I was like, wow, I love that. They did this and they get that. I'm in. I'm sold. Where do I sign up? And so to me, it was always sales first until I got a little older and I started to see that money was like the thing that we were after, right? Whatever the service was. And it's interesting because when I grew up that way, it's always been inside of me, that service first sales. Um, the world has gotten to a point for such a long time where service and sales is really intermingled. It's like almost one and the same. It's like a dance. And I'm appreciating what you're saying. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you started something, you ran with it. Um, Fulfillment had its journey. And then I noticed that you've come back full circle, hit these big numbers. And that's what's awesome to me, man. Like that's what I want to get really granular here with you. I know you're touching on it, but what's super sexy for me, man, is Colin the man. Like the man, the dad, the human, the spiritual entity. What is it? And you know what? I'm going to go into some questions that'll actually tie into this. I have some people that reached out and asked some questions. And so I always want to do it on my podcast so that not just I answer it, but my guest answers it. And some of this is relating specifically to fulfillment and service and customers and ongoing support. One of the things that they asked me was, what's something that you chased for years that ended up not mattering at all? Let's attach that question, you and I, to like our business, whether it was the business at the time that I met you or that is prevalent today. Do you have anything that you feel that you've chased for years and then when you ended up, getting it, it didn't matter at all?
That's a deep question. There's a lot of answers that bubble up to the top for that. I would have to, if I had to pick one singular response there, is the the showcase or the opinion of people that are not within an immediate circle. So, and I'll go into an example of, particularly in my space, there's a lot of people on social media in the funding space that they'll buy the fancy car, they'll live in the penthouse, and frankly, none of those things really matter to me. 80% of the money that we make, I just put back into the business. And maybe it's not this one, but into another business. Because I'm a strong believer of I don't want to be that atypical person that works themselves to the bone to 60 years old and then decides, hey, I've been here long enough, I'm ready to retire. I want to be able to, at any given point in time, if I wanted to liquidate everything and just live comfortably, I could do that. Not that I'm going to do that. I've way more aspirations of things, that I want to check off um that proverbial like dream list, if you will. But it's going back to the case example I made of people buying the things that they don't need or spending money lavishly. So much of that is to build this impression of what they have so that other people have some level of I will go to an example also when I sold cars. That's how I cut my teeth initially in sales. And I was very, very, very good selling cars. And it was actually that industry that opened up all the doors to me here. It allowed me to learn and understand, of course, the main component of sales. Because it doesn't matter what type of business you have, if you cannot portray your product in a way to solve somebody's problem, you're not selling what it is that you're doing, unless you just do impeccable work, right? And your craftsmanship, probably like your folks, unless the craftsmanship of your craft, whatever that is the selling component. But for a lot of people, that isn't, right? Particularly in the online space, we don't have a tangible product. So anyhow, I digress. Is I would rather somebody build their life in a level of comfort that makes them happy versus trying to appease other people that again aren't in their circle.
Yeah, I mean, it resonates with me in the journey of I've chased a lot of things many years of my life, you know, and I mean, you use the thing of the car salesman, and that reminded me of that too when we first had that interview or that conversation. You brought that to my attention, and we actually were talking sales to each other, and I knew I just aligned with you in every way, at a personal level as well. Um, but as I've chased a lot of things, and sales has been involved in that because everything in life kind of dumbs down to sales at the end of the day, communicating with people and
Literally everything.
everything,
Yeah.
understanding them, discovering them. My 16-year-old son, I always feel like he's selling me because he's trying to understand things. I'm trying to understand him, and it's just a way of communication. And I would say that after many years of chasing, gosh, I gotta say, like maybe it's recognition if I call something out, like being recognized for something, right?
Sure.
And I would say in all of these years, and now that I've gotten older and wiser, I believe, some people have told me that, um, I gotta say that recognition is not really up there anymore, man. It doesn't really matter to me. Like I know who I am. I know my bones, right? I know my flesh. And I'm very comfortable with that, right? And so I realized that it kind of just found its own way out the door. It didn't really matter to be seen or acknowledged or famous, anymore in my life. Honestly, man, I want to be a great dad till the day I die. I want to help people, serve people. I want to live a good life. So I guess that might be what I'm chasing for now. I don't know if I replaced it, Colin, but yeah, there is, and I'll see where I'm at down the road. If it ultimately, how did it matter to me being a great dad? That's for a
And look at
podcast.
the big billion-dollar companies. Not even billions. Just look at very wealthy businesses. More often than not, whoever owns that, you and I have no idea who they are. If we saw them in
Yeah.
public, we'd have no idea who they are. I would rather, going back to the side of fulfillment, I'd rather be judged on my actions and what I bring to the table versus what I showcase. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I would be perfectly happy. Like for me, right? All I care about in life as far as a tangible thing is what our situation now. I just want to live on land and have no one bother me.
Wow.
And now, like, I've gotten more involved on the social media side of things, which there's certainly aspect of branding that also helps, but a lot of my content now lately, it's not done to ever none of the content I do, which a lot of what I do now revolves around this, but it's not to break anybody down, but it's to shed light. Because in my space, in the regards to funding, over the years, over the last, I would say, 3-ish years, there's just been such an immense wave of misinformation that people share that and they talk about these things. Oh, and you would remember this just from the time we worked together. Like personal credit is incredible, like would probably be the most important thing someone has to have if they're looking to tap into various types of funding, right? Personal credit really does not matter, really only if they're looking for merchant cash advances, MCAs, which any business owner that's listening to this call, if your only option for funding is an MCA, you must ask this very critical question to yourself. Is if everything does not go according to plan, which likelihood it's not, that's just that's business in life. Things don't always go according to plan. But if it doesn't, in your deployment of that capital, will it be a make or break? Right? Will you still be able to recover? Will you still be able to come in on the other side um, profitable or not being buried under debt? If that's the answer, then an MCA is not a bad idea in that circumstance. But if there's any inkling or suggestion that it's a make or break situation where if the slightest thing variates from the plan in that deployment of working capital, if it points to, hey, this is going to be a problem if it doesn't work, stay away from it. Because that's the downside of merchant cash advance loans. They're incredibly, I mean, in my opinion, they're modern day loan sharks, but they hold their place. If you can capture, say, $50,000 on an MCA loan, but in your core and your business model, hey, I can turn that 50,000 into 100,000 over the next 6 months because maybe your marketing, your branding, something that generally has a direct correlation to revenue, then it might make sense. It might make sense, but otherwise just stay away from it. So that is the only example that I could share somebody where personal credit doesn't matter. Yet a lot of people on social media will say, "Hey, that's not important." The going back to the misinformation. So it's funding is a very fickle beast. Always boil it down to this simple question is if whatever you're doing or whatever your situation is, if there's any doubt in your mind that the bank might find you a risk factor, you're not ready. You need to make some changes. You need the appropriate help. or you just need to wait.
Yeah.
Because that, Alex, is the only thing banks care about. Is there a risk associated in this decision?
Man, my observation of you, it's the same that it was when I first met you many years ago, but my observation at this point on this episode is you're providing information, knowledge. Knowledge is power, but there's also something underneath that I'm observing from you, and that's that there's a passion, like there's actual desire. Yes, it makes money for you, it feeds your family, it pays the bills, all that wonderful stuff. It also employs people, and they pay their bills and they feed their families, and all of that stuff is happening. But underneath this, man, I observe and I hear like a passion for doing this, right? The way that you communicated about personal credit, right? Talk to me, man. Like, what was it? What happened back in the day? Why business funding? What was it that turned you on, that you're still on this journey after all these years, still talking from a place of passion and wanting to help people out? Yes, knowledge and information, but there's something underneath that, man. Tap into that. What happened to you? Why?
The core of that passion resides in a simple side or a simple factor. Capital is nothing but here, like this. My little desk stack here, right? This is nothing but a vehicle, right? This is metal and plastic. It's tangible, but it means nothing. And I could take this as $500,000. I could take this, I could blow it. Really, if someone wanted to blow a bunch of money really, really quickly, they can. So, in that regard, I look at it from the component of this does not change really any aspects of life. This is not a big movement maker in life. But what I can do with this in my business is substantially more than what I'm holding. So I'd mentioned something a moment ago before you jumped in is as long as there is a direct correlation of that capital to growth and scale, i.e., revenue, capital is massive. OPM, other people's money. So, capital as a vehicle is the number one thing I care about when I work with a new client. To the point that now about 40% of the people we talk to, we unfortunately, we'll give them tons of support, we'll give them tons of free material. Um, just because we want to help them and maybe they'll come back to us in the future. But if somebody doesn't have a clear, concise plan of leveraging that capital within their business, we don't want to work with them yet, right? So the ability of hearing a story of a client raise $200,000 6 months down the road, they've now made $1 million in their business. That, Alex, is where the passion resides, is to hear stories like that. Now, to go full circle, how did I, after all these years, not only how did I start here, and that's a long story, and I'll shuffle it down to a concise answer, is back when I sold cars, I had the opportunity after busting my butt actually selling, is I was able to work in the finance department. I was the guy in the glass room that no one liked to talk to, right? Because whenever you leave that room, like doing the paperwork, almost everyone that leaves, their payment is higher or they've spent more money. That was my job. But it gave me the opportunity there to also learn the critical side of how a credit report works, how lending works. Albeit lending in the automotive world is significantly different than this side, it still had enough similarities. I was able to learn some things, but mostly was the credit side, negotiating with the banks, getting financing done, understanding how to read that credit report. And before I got in that role, I myself had to fix my own credit. I mean, I lived in a double wide in southern Arizona, right? Money and finance was never top, a topic that was discussed with me. So I made bad financial decisions when I was young. I didn't know why, I didn't know any better. I mean, that's a real thing. This was before, not before internet, obviously, but ease access to information was different then to now. So I fixed my own credit, and this was before I got into finance. But as I went into finance, I had already done that, so I had I wouldn't say a lot of experience by any regard, but I had just the tiniest amount. And a young mother with her children. Now, this is what I heard from the salesperson, is a young mother and her children were dropped off on an Uber seeking to buy a car. And so they were there in the dealership. At the time, I was the finance director of that store. So they'd spent some time with the salesperson, they found something. She signed off on like your four square, like the numbers on the purchase, whatever. She signed off on it. She came back to my office. I had submitted that young mother to, if I remember correctly, like 9 different banks. She just needed a car. Her spouse is in the military, going through a divorce. Her car had broken down. Her spouse is also deployed overseas, was on a ship somewhere in the middle of the ocean, so she had no support. If I remember correctly, her hometown was like North Carolina or something, and this was in Washington State. So she had no idea what she was doing. She just needed help. And no matter how hard I tried, and I spent about 4 days almost exclusively working her file, just trying to get her a card, right? And I knew I was going to make maybe a couple $100. I was working for dollars an hour, right? If I was able to get this done. And I remember I had to have I made the phone call to her after a bunch of effort, unsuccessful effort at that time. And I had to give her the news, and she just sounded defeated. She wasn't upset. When you talk to somebody and just they're so beat down, you can just hear what their mind is saying, even though they're not saying it. You know what I'm talking about? I could just tell that in that moment. And I told her towards the tail end of that call, I said, hey, I have one idea. You're through the divorce, your credit got thrashed, but there's a few things that I did for my own credit that might help you. If we could just get a little bit of it pulled off, have the score go up just a little bit more on the right car, we might have a chance. And I said to her, hey, don't pay me anything. I'll just do it and I'll see what can happen. I already had the credit report, so I learned how to draft some dispute letters, and I learned how to. This is the early stages of like disputing online, because keep in mind this is like 9 years ago. So I did that, and about a month later, I invited her back in. We were able to put her in the car. Well, from that, because when military spouses and families, particularly when they live on a base, they all talk to each other, like very close knit in those communities. Well, over the span of the next like month, I had almost 10 people come into that dealership specifically wanting to work with me, at least on the credit side. They wanted help, but they were looking for cars. So I told the dealership, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm not charging them anything, so this isn't a service, so there's no liability aspect. But for my time and effort, I'm going to do their paperwork. I'm going to sell a little bit of cheap product, finance product, so I make a little bit of money to compensate myself for this extra work. And over the span of about 6 months, this had happened about 40-ish times. We sold a lot of cars doing this. But I started getting people coming in, referrals, saying, hey, I want help on the credit side, but I'm not in the market for a car. But I've heard enough from enough people here that you can actually help them. So it was at that moment I said, all right, well, I can't make money doing the finance thing, so I'm going to make money charging you. So, I'm going to be paid for my time. And it was cheap. But over about a year doing this, I had gotten up to about 10 grand per month in recurring revenue. And it was, the money I was making in finance dwarfs the 10K, but I knew, hey, if I took a leap into this, at least I know I have enough money to supplement life and everything else. I still had to tap, I still had to tap into my 401k. I tapped into savings because even though I didn't know much about business, I knew it took money to make money. So from that, I went all in. I quit my job, started doing this. This was just for credit repair. Started doing it full time. Had a lot of success really, really fast. I would accommodate that predominantly with I put a lot of money into it, right? And we grew very, very quickly, but we got to a point also very quickly. I was now cash poor, We were still able to make all of our bills. We made a little bit of profit, but I did the math and I figured, hey, I need one more big cash push, and we could level up to a point with a big enough marketing campaign for a certain period of time. We'll be able to get to a really comfortable spot and start refilling some of the money and, just growing comfortably. Now, this is where the finance, the business finance, business lending comes into play. Well, again, I didn't know anything what the hell I was doing. I was just winging a lot of this. So going to Google, I type in business loans. I got 2 offers back for merchant cash advance loans. Goes full circle in my comment earlier, right? But I got 2 offers totaling $90,000. So the pair was about 90 grand. Had I have taken them, I would have paid back close to 160,000. One was on a daily payback schedule. The other one was on a weekly payback schedule. To my comment earlier, if I would have done everything exactly perfect, that money would have worked. It would have helped. But if I would have had one mishap of any degree, probably, more than likely would have bankrupted everything. Had to close down all that bit. So that's when, and I ended up turning both of those down due to those reasons. I went to YouTube. I typed in alternative business financing, alternative business lending, something along those lines. That's where these little bits of plastic and metal came up. Business credit cards. Credit was still good. I didn't use a lot of personal credit cards at that time to do all this. Mostly was money saved in 401k, so my utilization was low. Just did some basic research for like 3 days. But I mean, I almost locked myself in a room for that time and just mind dumped as much as I could about business finance and everything else. Well, at the time, I already had a series of bank accounts opened because credit repair at the time was kind of high risk, so I wanted backup bank accounts. Um, Long story short, in an afternoon, I had raised over $100,000 of business funding through business credit cards, all 0% interest. Um, and it clicked, right? Like, oh, that was really, really cool. And fortunately, funding then is much easier than it is now. So, and I'm almost done in the tail end of answering your question here. So, when I did that, it gave me enough experience and exposure. I started teaching other people who we were doing credit repair that owned businesses. Again, I didn't charge anything at the time because I was still practicing. Hey, I just did this. Follow these steps and report back your experience. Tell me what works and what doesn't. Just let me know how it goes. Ton of people started getting a ton of funding. And at that point, it says, hey, there's a real need for this. We have a solution. Um, let's try to make something work. And that was where BC was born over 6 years ago. So, and my comment when I said a second ago it was much easier to fund back then than it is now is because one of our fatal flaws, which again, I'm grateful that we don't have that anymore now from experience, is we were still trying to fund like we were doing when I did it. Obviously, we had made some changes, but the other side with it that I'm very familiar with now is what works at, say, Chase Bank today very easily cannot work a week from today. Banks are always changing. Banks are ever so evolving. They're billion-dollar companies. They want to protect their money as much as they can. It is our job and duty as a funding company to try to, we can never stay ahead of them, but we at least want to stay on pace with them. So if they make changes, we accommodate and we save, the term is called a data point, right? Whatever that the bank is looking for, we have to match that with our clients. Whether that's adjustments on their profile, adjustments on the applications, whatever it is, we gotta stay side by side with lenders. And we've done a very, very damn good job at that over the last couple years now.
Yeah, man, awesome story. It looks like it was meant to be. Something happened to you. There was an experience, an awesome story, and you took advantage of the sense of helping someone. You've helped yourself. There's a lot of help involved in that. And each step of the way, it kind of grew into something, and then you turned it into a business. Talk to me about like the journey, because I was only involved for a period of time, and then I reconnected with you not too long ago. But there was there a period in your life in the business funding side where you either stepped away or reevaluated, or I mean, you took some hits. Everybody takes hits. It's part of being an entrepreneur. But in that period of taking hits and any adjustments, I mean, you're here. You're doing this. You're growing. You got bigger numbers. What what went through your mind, man? What went through your heart in a period where you had to readjust and things weren't really working as planned and you knew you had to do something about it? Like, why didn't you just stop or change directions or go elsewhere or be a badass over there? What kept you going and what had you believe in yourself and your abilities to keep pushing through to get to where you are today?
Two answers. If I had to pick the shortest answer to that, number one, I am unbelievably, unwaveringly stubborn. If I put my mind to something, Alex, I'm hell or high water. It's either I'm going to figure it out or everything will burn to the ground. There's no in between. That's one part. And the second part, a good friend of mine, Brody Kern, he doesn't do it anymore. He's now shifted some gears, but he founded a coaching company called Wake Up Wealthy.
Mm.
And in his office, who's also in Austin, I've spent a lot of time there getting to know him and his family and all of his employees and everything else. In his office, he has this big the letter lamp or whatever lettering, but it's called "The End is Secure." And that's stuck with me for a long, long time.
Mm.
You believe in yourself, you believe in what you do, you maintain a high level of passion. There's nothing that can stop you. Business, like in sales, like in almost everything else, it's all about finding a solution to a problem. And there's a solution somewhere. It's how much of the bullshit you got to go through and how much of the bullshit can you endure before you find the solution. It's just unfortunately not a lot of people have that high wherewithal of going through the muck and the blood and the pain to find out on the other side.
Is that something that you felt
And
was
I've
inherent in you, or did you feel like you learned that? That's a learned thing. You were coached that. You were shown
probably
that.
both. Probably both. I mean, I was predominantly raised by my grandparents, old cowboy, right? That was my grandfather. And he was, if I think I'm stubborn, the comparison is I was in no way stubborn in comparison to him, right? He'd broken more bones than I think he could even count to, right? Doing rodeo, working horses. He was pinned under a tractor. When I think I was like 9 years old. He was pinned under a tractor, a big one, for like 12 hours. Right? Every doctor around thought like this dude's not living 48 hours. When he did, they said, all right, he'll never walk again. Well, and then he walked on his own accord, under his own ability, walked into Stalker's office. No joke. I wasn't there. I don't know if this is true, but I sure hope it is. He punched his doctor and walked out. Right? Like, that's the level of stubborn I grew up with. And I myself, I don't know. I think it was just inherent because I had no other kind of examples, if you will. Um, and maybe it was taught. I don't know. I don't know. I like to say it's a bit of both.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. You know, this is a specific thing that I want to chat with you about. A, because we're fathers, and we're business owners, and we are both stubborn in our ways. But there's these new generations coming around, or a new generation coming around of work ethic, integrity. And I want to be specific about just the attachment to what we're involved in, which is like high ticket, online sort of sales and service and whatnot. And when I look at that integrity and that grit that you have that I'm familiar with and that I'm also familiar with in my life, where do you think like this stumbled up upon you? And this was many, many years ago before a lot of this industry blew up, right? I've been in the high ticket
Mhm.
sales for a little over 7 years, man. I remember when there was a lot of nobody around. No, it we had to like explain what was going on because it just was unheard of back then. Now, when you look at any of the social media, kids are popping up all over the place. Businesses are popping up all over the
Mm-hmm.
place. Everybody looks totally young now, right? Isn't that how, like, when you get older, you're like, my God, it's a Major League Baseball team and they all look like kids. What happened, right? It's because we're getting older. And so there's a lot of the generation coming up where they're attached to this high ticket. It's a huge boom. That's one thing that I want to talk to you about. And then I want to talk about the opposite of that, where I feel like this upcoming generation is almost lazier. Like they don't want to work. They don't have that integrity that we had. But first I want to go into talk to me, man, about your thoughts. You touched on it with like the industry you're in, the vertical you're in. It's all over the place. I mean, everybody's hitting it left and right. You're still in it. You're kind of an OG, I would say. What's your take on like,
Sadly enough, 6 years, I kind of am.
yeah, no.
Obviously, there's, probably 100 other guys and gals that's been doing it longer, of course, but the amount of people that have popped in and dropped off is immense. And it's just going to keep happening.
Yeah. What's your take? I mean, not just I guess technically they're competition, right? There's millions of people that need services. So at the end of the day, we all have access to those millions of people if they're attracted to us and our services. But what's kind of your, or more so not what your take or your thoughts are, but how is that affecting you? Is any of that affecting you where everybody's springing up another funding services popping up? And does that affect you in
Um,
any way?
it affects us in two degrees that are most prominent. Number one, trust. And you probably have heard this term before, but trust economy is at an all-time low. Because, and I kind of cued on this, I think that's what you're referencing. I cued on this on like the social media side. There's so much just blatant lies, right? People they want to tell you what you want to hear and not what you need to hear, right? And banks, they are an unemotionable entity. Banks don't care about your story. They don't care what you're going through. I will, right? Because I genuinely want to help people. And I'll hear you out and I'll hear what your goals are and your aspirations. And that's also why a lot of my passion resides into what can you accomplish with the funding? Right? What can you turn it into? What can you build? What can you change? But the banks don't care about that, right? So when people are told something that is not accurate, or they're told half lies and half truths, it ends up enough people get burnt that no matter what you tell them, no matter how much proof you can convey or educate or anything like this, it has absolutely made an impact where people don't trust what we can accomplish. Even though I can show them, right? I can show them on a Slack channel that populates every single one of our funding rounds, and I can show them, hey, in the last 36 hours, we've raised $3 million because we had a huge push. Right? Here's the numbers. Here's all the approvals. Here's the denials and the reason why. Right? Um, so the trust economy is at an all-time low. That's one of the implements. And even though we can prove and we can show up and we can show them the term "it's too good to be true" comes up too much. Because I've built this offer to be fully encompassing, even when we were working together, right? I looked at the funding as a one-stop shop to a solution of their problem.
Hmm.
If you have credit concerns, cool. About 30+% of our clients are in a very specific situation, similar situation as you are. And if we don't address that, if we don't overcome that, it doesn't matter who you work with. It doesn't matter where you go. You'll never either get approved, nor will you ever get favorable terms and conditions on that capital. So if I tell somebody, hey, if you have credit concerns, we can fix that. If your business is uncompliant and possibly jacked up, even on the smallest detail, well, not only will we fix it, but we're going to find it first. It's better for us to do due diligence find that issue and fix it versus just winging it and the bank finds it. Because guess what? If old Johnny Chase Bank finds it, they're probably going to tell everybody else. And that's just anyone listening, that's called a data furnisher, right? Whenever things are found on a credit report on a business, that oftentimes will get reported to what's called a data furnisher. Some examples: LexisNexis, Innovis. There's a ton of them, but those are the ones that pop up in my mind at the moment. But they will sell that information to credit bureaus, so sell that information to other lenders and financial institutions. So if one person finds it, one lender finds it, likely that the rest will find out too, even if we fix it. So now it goes back to the side of, well, that risk side, you're showing more risk. And that's where going to me saying banks are unemotional. They don't care about the story. They just care about the one simple equation. Alex, if I give you $100, what's the probability of you giving my $100 back? Hey, Alex, cool. Everything you've shown me, everything you can prove, really strong likelihood you'll give me my $100 back. Alex, I will happily, here you go, $100. But if it goes around to, what's the chance Alex is going to give me my $100? I don't know. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe not, or probably not. Man, hey, I wish you the best. Love to help you in the future, but now's not the time.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people are falling themselves into.
Yeah. You know
Right?
what?
Default rates at an all. Go ahead.
Listening to you, I really want to frame this out nicely because this is like huge. Is a huge thing for me because I grew up this way. But you're an example of it. So you know sales. In the situation when you started, you were selling cars. You didn't create those cars. You didn't manufacture those cars. You just sold those cars. You're
Mhm.
an entrepreneur right now where you are the fulfillment. You are crafting the car. You're creating the vehicle for your clients. So you're both the salesperson and the service provider, that and the business owner. So those are like a combination that is what separates you from just like being a salesman, a closer. So A game, big part of A game is I coach closers to excel, scale, grow. But I also help them be confident. There's a mindset to selling and to closing and to communicating. But most closers are just the salesperson. They didn't create the car. They didn't build the car. They're not involved in the fulfillment side. They're not dealing with the human after they close them, right? They're not dealing with that. They're not dealing with a business, the ups and downs, the trials and the tribulations, right? They're not dealing with the refunds and the they are dealing with
They
clawbacks,
don't
but they're
have
not
the
dealing with the human
they don't have
element
the
of that.
accountability of what happens after the fact of the sale.
They're not. So there is a separation, and as a business owner, growing up with business owners, you're responsible for everything at the end of the day, right? And so when I hear you, it rings in my mind like being that there is a separation. So I always say this to my clients, like you're not the doctor. You're not the brain surgeon. You're not the one that's going to eventually the patient's going to come, go underneath, and then they're going to remove the problem from the brain, and they're going to wake up and they're going to live happily ever after. You're not the doctor. You're like the person that has to help the person believe that this is the right doctor, this is the right surgery, this is the right process. Buy this, pay for this, or attach your insurance to this so that you can move forward. But they're not involved in that surgery. They're not involved in actually fulfilling the human being. So there's a disconnect there, right? They're involved in the art and science of the close, the sale, the psychology behind it, right? I'm tapping on this, man, because being that you're an entrepreneur and a lot of entrepreneurs I do speak with have done it all, can do it all, right? You're responsible for everybody that you bring in that pays you and your company, right? And that's a lot of weight. Question is this: how important is that? Like to all the closers out there in the world that are watching this, that are specifically just the closers, they're not the brain surgeon. Is that important? Does that matter? Do you need to have that inside of you or no? Can you still sell the car without having any involvement or creation or whatnot of this vehicle? What is your thought on that? Is there a separation? Is there a need to be a part of fulfilling or not at all? They don't need to be in any way intertwined.
The marks of a great salesperson is somebody whom, if the occasion calls for, if the occasion calls for them to explain to a finite degree of a process of their offer, whatever it is that they're selling or presenting, they must know that not only the product, but the bones, the core, they need to understand all of that to an umpteenth degree. As a salesperson, I will never expect my salespeople to hop off the sales calendar to then talk to somebody on the fulfillment side. That is not their job. But I need that salesperson if some fluke occasion happened that they had to do that. I need them to be capable enough to do it.
Hmm.
So, all that concludes to this. A salesperson to be great at their craft. Like for me, I don't need a salesperson who's great at selling insurance. Why? We don't sell insurance. But I need a salesperson to be great at understanding how to read a credit report, how to understand basic, preferably better than basic, but basic understanding and knowledge of or data points for a lender, because they must be responsible to present what we have as a solution or offer. They must be capable to present that and attach it to the person that they're talking to. I can have anybody come in, literally anybody come in and say, cool, we'll get you funding. If you have credit issues, we can fix that. Do you want to do it? Anybody could do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes a very specific and well-trained salesperson to have talk to a prospect. Cool, pull up your credit report, analyze it line by line, and say, hey, this, and this, if left unaccounted for, you will have a very hard and difficult time getting access to OPM. Again, that's other people's money, funded. I need them to look at the basic levels of their business documentation and understand, hey, there's a discrepancy here. That's a risk factor. You're going to have a really hard time if this goes unaccounted for. Now, if a salesperson could look at it from that perspective and that angle in a sales call, presenting that offer, and then fine tailor the solution specifically to that prospect, do they have a better or worse chance of, well, closing that deal?
Yeah.
Every time the chances is much higher.
I'm going to throw a question out there because I wanted to make sure I get some of these questions out there, but this is going to tie into what you're saying. And then I have my own question that I want to ask you specifically in regards to AI. But the question is, have you, Colin, ever lost a deal because you were trying too hard to prove yourself and or your service?
Probably because I can be very long-winded.
Get into this, man. Long-winded, meaning just talking, expanding, not having breadth.
Yeah, no, I found myself where I'll answer a question and then find that answering a question imposes two new questions that otherwise never would have came up, and frankly probably don't even matter to the conversation. So yeah, and I've spent a lot of time, because even to today, like I still hop on the sales calendar, right? Due to overflow or due to the simple fact of I want to talk to who we're servicing, right? I'm very fortunate I don't have to be involved in onboarding calls. Generally, I don't have to be involved in regular follow-up or client meetings anymore. I've teamed for that. But I'm still very, very happy and very willing, and oftentimes do on my own accord speak with people. So to circle back, see, long-winded, to circle back to your question. Yeah, no, absolutely. I found myself maybe not trying too hard, but in my line of work, it's very easy to overshare because there's just so many components that goes into it.
Is that because you're coming from the fulfillment side, the service side, and you just want to share and you want to serve? Is that what it is?
I just want people to have a really strong understanding so I could also frame it properly. Okay. I will tell people all the time is if improper expectations are made for that client, I would prefer us not even work with them. And that's why I also go back into I need a salesperson who could understand a lot of the components of fulfillment is because if they say something improper to that person and say, hey, oh, you have all these problems, don't worry about it, we'll get you funding in a few days. Now they come back and meet with the fulfillment team, and now they're just like, no, that's
Yeah.
not going to happen.
The promises or whatnot are
So
not
it
aligned.
just, yeah, it compromises everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
let me
it
bring it into this
starts that
question.
relationship off on a very bad foot.
I hear you. I hear you. Let me ask you this. So, what kind of person, being a salesperson and being that you work with salespeople, what kind of person usually becomes or is incredible at sales? What does that person look like? And then the opposite of that, what kind is just not good at sales?
The person who will always make the best salesperson. There's a few attributes. I'm just gonna quickly run through the ones that pop up in my head. Number one, they got to be incredibly cash hungry, right? They got us almost to the point of, hey, I'm eating ramen noodles if I don't get this deal done. So when someone is cash hungry, oftentimes more than not, they will go the extra mile. Maybe not in that conversation, but they'll go the extra mile to talk to the next prospect. Those are the salespeople that will dig through their pipeline. They're the salespeople that if someone doesn't answer or show up to the call, they'll call them 5 times within the hour.
Yeah,
They
they're hungry.
don't let
Yeah.
deals. They're hungry.
Yeah.
So there's that. And the salesperson who has enough integrity of their own to always have a standard of they want to get better in some level, some way. They want to make more money. They want to close more deals. They want to do it easier. They want to have shorter sales calls. There has to be something there, some performance markers on their own, not given by us. They have to do it on their own, right? So self-driven. They got to have specific markers, whatever that is, to say, hey, I'm going to be better this month than I was last.
I hear you loud and
Which
clear.
kind of feeds into the third thing is they have to always want to be better.
Yeah.
And I picked those three because that's what I did.
Yeah.
Now I understand just because I did it might not work for everybody, right? Like my solution might not be the template, obviously, but I've seen it work for enough people. Those three things, more times than not, will prove to be a better salesperson than I think the other side of your question, like what is indicators of someone who's possibly not a good salesperson, not a
Yeah.
good
Just go
closer.
do something. Go
Um,
like brush horses for a living.
well, like the biggest one is they're lazy,
Lazy.
right? Lazy is probably the number one attribute of a closer, full stop. Is if the person doesn't show up by my second phone call, whatever, I'm gonna move on to the next. Or I'll dig into my CRM maybe later. Or they have to be asked a bunch of times.
Right. Yeah.
Or they're gonna be reliant on the automation or the AI or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing you on the lazy side. It's definitely a interpretation because they might not be lazy. A lot of times they are lazy, but sometimes it's because they're just not connecting the dots, man. Like it's just not their thing. They're not a painter, right? And no matter
Mhm.
how much you try to try to help them, they're just not a painter in that regard. And it's time to move on. I mean, but lazy is a big one. Here's my last and final. By the way, I agree with all of you. Agree with everything you just said to a T. 100% you and I are 100% in alignment with those three and even the lazy. Here's the final question I have for you. And I really, really want you to take a minute to think about this because we do live in this world now. Do
Mhm.
you believe AI will replace sales people and when?
I don't think AI will ever inherently replace salespeople, but AI absolutely will, the use case of AI will absolutely be a key indicator for the business if they will continue to be successful during the wave of AI. The businesses that jump in early and not only fully embrace it, but continually optimize, continually change and get better, those businesses, full stop, will be more successful and very quickly surpass the other businesses. And I don't care what industry it is. Like, I believe this to be a blanket statement across all business of every type. If they don't fully embrace it and jump in during the wave now, 5 years from now, they'll be nobody.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you on that as well. But now I got to challenge you and I want to go there. Why? What's your reasoning why you feel AI technology will not replace a salesperson on a sales call?
Is okay, if we're talking high ticket, there has to be a certain level of connection and understanding that only comes from a person to person conversation. And when I say high ticket, I mean, hey, there's a good chance that if someone builds a good enough system with enough educational material, like Rabi Abuvala, right? One of his big things is leveraging YouTube and long form material to pre-educate somebody
Mhm.
to a position like, hey, I want to work together. What do I do? What's the next step? Where do I sign up? Right? Like, hey, there's a chance there that if a business does that, they might be successful selling high ticket without the use case of an actual conversation. Um, if they're selling something under maybe 2 grand, again, if their system's good enough, they might be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
But if we're talking multiple thousands of dollars, even with incredible systems, even with incredible information where the prospect is showing up to a very high degree of pre-sold, people still need to have confirmation from person to person. Hey, Alex, I understand what you're trying to accomplish. This is what I do. This is where I work. I'm a salesperson for this. I'm a representative. And based off of your specific situation, we could accomplish your goals together. We could do this for you.
I love that. I love
Well,
that.
you know,
What one of the
a
things that
robot or a AI caller just it doesn't have the emotional side to be capable of such a thing.
here's why I challenge it. I don't know if you remember, I used to coach acting for a long time, from Shakespeare to theater to film to commercial. And I remember 17, 18 years ago, I did a program. I had a program called Acting on Set, and it blew up. And I was coaching actors. And I remember I'd be invited to these conventions, a bunch of actors in these hotels and whatnot. And I used to always like offend them at least. At least I got their attention. And I always said back then, I said, one thing I'm going to tell you that will happen, mark my words, is human actors will be replaced by technology. No, no. And then Toy Story came out, like all these things started coming out. And what was interesting about it, Toy Story was the first animation, but then there was a lot of like CGI and a lot of stuff that really showed that these nerds that are in their rooms and their desktops and building these stories through CGI and whatnot can tell a story and have an emotional impact. Yes, they're actor voiceovers, but there was an effect. It affected humans. And the history now is actors on strike and all that kind of stuff. But yes, has technology replaced a lot of actors, human actors? Absolutely. 100%. Some of them you don't even know is that a real person? Is that not a real person?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. The challenge is technology's already replaced a lot of human actors. I mean, the background is all fake, but you think it's real. Like, is there really a million people back there? Oh my
Yeah.
God. It has replaced visually, right? I'll leave you with this. So one of the jokes that I say or the humors that I say is I believe, I'm gonna quote me again. I believe we're gonna get to a point, Colin, where our AIs are so sophisticated, they're on calls with the sales company AI and they're having it out. And eventually we're like, oh shoot, they just had a conversation a month ago and I'm involved, the company's involved with, because our AIs have agreed to move forward with the AI of that company, and we're in bed together. That is what I believe is how sophisticated AI is going to get. That you and I are going to be on some beach somewhere and go, "What's your AI doing now?" Oh yeah, we she just got signed on with a, because we're going to trust our AIs to be smart enough to handle conversations with their AIs. It could go there, Colin. Pretty wacky, I know. I
Yeah.
know. I was laughed at before, but we might get there someday soon.
I mean, just look at the pace over the last 2 years. It's been immense. I've shared this a couple of times. Is there was when ChatGPT shortly after the API. So API has been out for OpenAI for a while now, but shortly after it came out to be used in public, there was a resource called AutoGPT,
Mm.
and it was the first GitHub resource of leveraging AI agents to do specific tasks, right? Well, now we hear Claude Code and OpenClaw and all this kind of stuff where agents are kind of like the new hot topic with AI. Well, 2 years ago, the system, the concept of AutoGPT, like it kind of worked. It didn't work very well. Fast forward again 2 years, like oh my god, it's night and day different in the sophistication, what it can accomplish, and all this sort of stuff. What's going to be the next 2 years? What innovation? What changes that are going to be? So yeah, your point of AI representative. I mean, yeah, it's a wild, far fetched thought, but if you really think about it, just for even a second, is it that far fetched?
Yeah.
And I would wager money on the idea that you just proposed will be a thing in the near future, not the far, but the near future.
Near
It's
future.
just same question of everything. Will it catch? And if it does, what's that next evolution going to be?
Yeah.
And that's why in the very beginning of your question, I said those that catch on to the wave now will substantially surpass everybody else. And I mean, think about it. There's still businesses that use fax machines.
Yeah.
And hey, they've only stayed alive for one singular, maybe two reasons. In their local market, there's no one in their competition, so they're the only option. Or two, they've just been around for 70 years and they have a huge customer base. But if a business now opened up using phone books and paper CRM lists and all that kind of, someone tried doing that now, man, I'm sorry for the difficulty you're about to go through.
You can't even comprehend it anymore. And we grew up with that. Like we know that,
Yeah,
we knew that world, and now it's a different world. But it's going to be exciting, man. But here's one thing that I do believe in, and I do know will happen in the very near future and onward, is there will always be entrepreneurs, and
mhm,
there'll always be entrepreneurs with integrity and entrepreneurs that are out to help and serve, because it changes their lives as well. And they've been through it and they can help others. So I always know it'll always be a good world, because there's always entrepreneurs like us that will definitely continue to keep forging the way. Um, as an OG, my friend, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being on my show, my
thanks
friend.
for having
I
me.
wish you all the best of luck. Maybe we're friends because we're beard guys.
I
You
don't have
know,
the long hair anymore,
you
so
don't. Yeah, neither do I. I've chopped it. We gotta get a haircut and get a real job. Remember that song? Yeah, it goes way back. Well, listen, my friend, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I always wish you the best of luck, you and your family, and I look forward to seeing all of the upcoming things that you're doing. And yeah, man, keep helping people, keep blessing people, and give them what they're looking for so that they can have a better life.
fantastic. Appreciate the time, Alex.
Thank you, brother. Best of luck. Bye.
As to you. Bye bye.